All of these 64 codons that literally create our physical reality, our biology, our emotions, the tangible, the intangible, our character constructs. Like, you can work with these codons to create, to slice or dice, to generate certain traits, certain attributes of a human consciousness. Like, this stuff is profound. And we're talking about 64 codons, 64 star tetrahedron, 64 hexagrams in the I Ching. Like, there is something going on. Again, this is part of the larger picture. Like, who did this? What is this? Right? This is larger, right? You look at the manifestation of 64 everywhere. You got to suspect that there's a larger design, right? And that the geometry is our way of understanding that larger design. It's our way of looking at the whole picture. It brings together the different religions, the different cosmologies, the different ways of interpreting reality. It's all going to come down to the bridge of geometry, right? So that is part of understanding, I'm going to say space-time, but that's not quite right at all. But part of understanding the larger picture, I guess. So we'll get back to the slides. But this fundamental number, right? This can take us to numerological grids, right? It can encourage us to look at larger patterns, right? We've got the 64 that's everywhere, but we've also got the patterns of 9, right? And how if you study 3, 6, and 9, it's another way of understanding our reality through numerology, through geometric structure of 3, 6, and 9, and the interrelationship and how it's woven throughout every. It's the same. It's the same as some of the other geometries, right? The phi, just finding the significance and the substance of a structure, and then noticing that this isn't just theoretical, right? You see the 64 star tetrahedron, but what you really see is the 2D manifestation of it, flower of life. We also see it in spherical form in the 3D flower of life. But these concepts, this structure is woven throughout all the cultures. It's associated with sacred sites, with wisdom traditions. They are contained and held sacred by the geometry, right? My favorite is the Fu Dog right here. The guardians of the Forbidden Temple in Asian traditions, where literally the Fu Dog has a 3-dimensional sphere of the flower of life. And how did that happen? What is this overarching pattern where we see this geometry everywhere? 64 is everywhere. The pattern of 6. I mean, it's that when you start to open the door, and I know many of us know these things, and so the invitation is to take it to the next level. Where else do you see the geometry? How else do you incorporate it into your life? Where's the numerology? Like, taking it to different levels, because it's infinite. So this is a quote by Adam, and this is this is another way of understanding, of just bringing it all together, right? That every experience we have is essentially modulated through a particular geometry, which acts as an interface between consciousness and space-time, right? So the geometries are the bridge and the conduit, right? When we refer to geometry as sacred, we are actually pointing to the relationship between each of us and the whole universe. And this connection is revealed through shapes, which can help define our experiential spectrum of life. Adam's awesome. And he, he's great at explaining the interconnectivity and that we interpret everything through geometry. So you're getting the bigger picture, I hope. Maybe even getting turned on and tuned into some of the ways of connecting with the geometric structure, which is fundamental shape, the fundamental structure of space-time, right? And our infinite potential and how they're woven together. And I want to say just one more aspect, right? Just one more avenue, right? We can't talk about flower of life. We can't talk about it without, we can't talk about sacred geometry without mentioning Metatron's cube, right? So I wanted to add it. We've got the 64, we've got the vector equilibrium, and then we've got the platonic solids that give us our star tetrahedron. It brings us all back, like all of the geometry shows us a pathway for incorporating every single element, right? In this case, literally the 5 elements. And we've got the flower of life, seed of life, flower of life, 64, this whole progression of understanding the full expression of the seed of the flower takes us into Metatron's cube, right? This is the fundamental way of interpreting space-time, if you will, of going into the elemental aspects and understanding our reality through 5 fundamental shapes that are all in this shape, this beautiful Metatron's cube. Oh, it just elicits joy for me right now. It is so harmonic. Again, perfectly balanced, based in the seed, this hexagonal structure, and it has these 5 platonic solids, right? You can find these structures within that shape. And these are ways of connecting with our physical elements, right? This takes us from all of that metaphysical through the geometry into the physical and the 5 elements. Part of the power of it is that it is the 5 elements, not the 4. Most of us learned about 4 elements, and that's part of the containment, right? This is another example of how space and the infinite potential of space was compartmentalized, and we were given earth, air, fire, and water, which is awesome. And you got to celebrate the cultures that brought in that brought in space. Chi in Eastern traditions, prana in the Hindu traditions, chi, prana, energy, one more word, ether, right? In the scientific community, there's the swept under the rug, right? Ether swept under the rug into dark matter. It was a source of equations that ended in infinity. We didn't like it. So these 5 platonic solids, one of them represents space, which is cool. It brings it back into the picture. It helps us access that when our consciousness works with Metatron's cube, when our waking consciousness works with it, our subconscious, right, is getting really turned on because this is speaking through shape and through geometric structure to the subconscious. It's bringing the element of space back into our awareness subconsciously. Like we're just sitting there drawing Metatron's cube, getting a tattoo, and really we are activating the 5 elements. We're bringing the tetrahedron, the tetrahedron, which represents fire. Good sign to breathe, right? Where we can use the octahedron and the air to connect with our breath, right? Take a nice deep one. So exciting. I'll calm down a little bit. We've got the tetrahedron representing the element of fire. The octahedron representing the element of air. Earth, hexahedron, cube, all connected. The icosahedron representing the element of water. And then the dodecahedron, super special, representing the element of ether. So I kind of skipped over these 3, the 3 criteria that make something called a platonic solid, right? Discovered by Plato, brought into the mystery traditions, understanding that these 5 elements create and determine much of our reality, and that we can manipulate them, that we can cover them up, that we can keep it top secret. Again, the ether, the energy kept top secret. The pattern. It's a curious pattern. We start looking into that, right? Be liberating to find out why it was kept from us, and then have a way to access it by attending to these platonic solids and the other geometries. Right. So the 3 criteria are that every internal angle in the shape is the same, right? So in the tetrahedron, all the angles are 60 degrees. In the cube, all the inner angles are 90 degrees. And there is some fascinating math, the relationship between 60, 90, and 108. And I want to encourage you to look into the math again. All the inner angles are the same. All the faces on the outside of the geometry are the same. So tetrahedron, octahedron, triangles, icosahedron triangles, and then dodecahedron, pentagons, and the cube is square. Oh, so simplified. There's so much going on in here. And the basis that's related to this talk is that it helps us access the subconscious parts of ourselves that resonate with these elements. The fact that we are these 5 elements, we are earth, air, fire, water, and space and energy. So you are harmonizing your system. Harmonizing profoundly. And these 5 platonic solids lead us to the 5th. No, the 6th. So much talking. The 6th important shape, which is 2 tetrahedrons inverted within themselves. And they are called star tetrahedrons, right? And they're also known as our Merkabah, right? So now we're getting into another pathway where the geometry can get us to access an infinite source of potential, right? Where this is a technology. What we're talking about is our light body, which is literally what we look like. It is the central pattern. It is the geometric structure of us without our spacesuits on. Like if we could expand energetically, we would look like geometries that are spinning and rotating, right? We would be this central essence that does not have the restriction of space-time, of the limited constructs of time and physicality. And we would be liberated into our divinity, our light, our ability to move throughout the cosmos, ability to tap the wormholes and show up as orbs in other dimensions and have a good time, right? Have a better time if you can play in the light body, play in other dimensions, in higher dimensions, right? And there's ways of tapping into that light body. This geometry isn't just like dangled in front of us. This is part of the clue of how to get to higher states of consciousness. And, lots of techniques, a lot of these were part of the mystery school, but Drinvalo Melchizedek and the School of Remembering that incorporates all of the geometry has techniques for rotating, spinning the tetrahedrons, right? Divine feminine, divine masculine, again, harmonizing, using techniques to fire up our energy centers, right? Align our chakras, access those elements, right? Power of geometry is remarkable and accessible and available. 2 synonyms again, but it is here with us. It is part of our blueprints. We have this. Each of us has it. It's, connected to our DNA, also part of our auric field, light body. Like the geometry can take us into this more transcendental aspects of ourselves, right? Going beyond the physicality. And using it, using the geometry, envisioning that we have a Merkabah, starting to understand that we have a light body, we have auric fields, we have sensory capacities, we have profound capacities to access other dimensions, other states of consciousness. And it's all in the geometry. It's all represented by geometric structure. Right? And the structure helps us come into wholeness. It helps us access and turn on our physicality and our infinite source of energy within us that also looks like our Merkabah and this spinning, rotating, high vibrational essence of us that then connects with the larger infinite capacity of the universe. And again, you start to see why and how traditions or marketing or currents, shall we say, uses of geometry to influence us, influence our behavior massively, right? All of this is an invitation to contemplate the larger. And it's one path to God, right? It's one path to source. And so many other traditions, studies, interpretations of our reality, they're all vital and really important. And the deal is you can always reduce them to geometry, right? So you've got studying Judaism and Hebrew traditions, and it's gonna show you that there's a geometric pattern at the shape, at the core, to help us understand the information, to help us anchor it symbolically. We need symbolism, we need finite structure so that we can expand, right, and up level, up to God, connect with source, connect with the future self, connect with other dimensional realities. This gives us the ability to expand into things that we haven't been able to comprehend before. I think I have one other little bit that is part of my other passion, because the geometry that we can understand it on planet is connected to off planet, as I mentioned, and off planet are very advanced civilizations that use geometry to impart very complex wisdom, right, and intelligence and technology. Geometry can hold all of it, right? It's fundamental, universal language, math, and so connecting with advanced civilizations, higher dimensional beings, and the guidance and support that they have to offer us, you can use the geometry to do that too. And one of the greatest stepping stones, and Neil and I are just kind of geeky about it, so we went all the way to Europe to study. I don't know if that's the right word, to revel in some crop circles, okay? Because this is one of the sort of curious phenomenon, right? That takes the geometry, it brings it into our awareness, it brings it into our collective consciousness, right? In a way that we otherwise might not have thought of, in a way that bridges that idea that there is larger communication, that there are, that we're not alone in the universe, right? Like so much of this has kept us thinking that this dimension, this planet, these bodies are what's real. And I believe that they're not, they are, but they're not the only game in town, right? And that's what we've been told. And so crop circles are a little hint. They kind of scream at the geometry. They tell us that there's communication happening. Certainly, you can play with the idea and the conversation of who makes them, right? And you can say, yeah, humans make them with ropes and boards. There's no big deal about it. Don't even look. But if you want to, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of potential that says they're made by advanced technologies and that they're messages here to help us evolve, and that they use geometry to do so. Yeah, there's genuine ones and non-genuine ones, right? It's a whole study. I teach courses on it. I love it, and I love talking about it because it's its own activation, right? We're talking about activating our DNA through geometry. We're activating the geometry of our DNA through geometry, right? So here's that hexagonal pattern, right? That pattern that we saw that is so fundamental. It's woven into Metatron's cube. It's one of the platonic solids in essence. The solid is the 3D form of the hexagon, right? The cube. But it's in a lot of the different crop circles. It's in a lot of the messages that come through. If any of this turns you on, come talk to me more, because I am so fascinated by what these things mean and what they're trying to tell us. And what we know is that if they're using geometric patterns, if they're using hexagons, right, there's at least some bridge between our third dimension and other dimensional realities where they come from.